Introduction to Ghosts by Henrik Ibsen. Translated by William Archer. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org.
Introduction by William Archer. Read by Kristingj. The winter of 1879–80 Ibsen spent in Munich, and the greater part of the summer of 1880 at the Berchtesgaden. November 1880 saw him back in Rome, and he passed the summer of 1881 at Sorrento. There, 14 years earlier, he had written the last acts of Peer Gynt. There he now wrote, or at any rate completed, Gjengangere, or Ghosts. It was published in December 1881, after he had returned to Rome. On December 22nd he wrote to Ludwig Passarge, one of his German translators. My new play has now appeared, and has occasioned a terrible uproar in the Scandinavian press. Every day I receive letters and newspaper articles decrying or praising it. I consider it utterly impossible that any German theatre will accept the play at present. I hardly believe that they will dare to play it in the Scandinavian countries for some time to come. How rightly he judged we shall see anon. In the newspapers there was far more obloquy than praise. Two men, however, stood by him from the first. Björnson, from whom he had been practically estranged ever since the League of Youth, and Georg Brandes. The latter published an article in which he declared, I quote from memory, that the play might or might not be Ibsen's greatest work, but that it was certainly his noblest deed. It was, doubtless, in acknowledgment of this article that Ibsen wrote to Brandes on January 3rd, 1882. Yesterday I had the great pleasure of receiving your brilliantly clear and so warmly appreciative review of Ghosts. All who read your article must, it seems to me, have their eyes opened to what I meant by my new book, assuming, that is, that they have any wish to see it. For I cannot get rid of the impression that a very large number of the false interpretations which have appeared in the newspapers are the work of people who know better. In Norway, however, I am willing to believe that the stultification has in most cases been unintentional, and the reason is not far to seek. In that country a great many of the critics are theologians, more or less disguised. And these gentlemen are, as a rule, quite unable to write rationally about creative literature. That enfeeblement of judgment which, at least in the case of the average man, is an inevitable consequence of prolonged occupation with theological studies, betrays itself more especially in the judging of human character, human actions, and human motives. Practical business judgment, on the other hand, does not suffer so much from studies of this order. Therefore, the reverend gentlemen are very often excellent members of local boards, but they are unquestionably our worst critics. This passage is interesting as showing clearly the point of view from which Ibsen conceived the character of Manders. In the next paragraph of the same letter he discusses the attitude of the so-called liberal press, but as the paragraph contains the germ of an enemy of the people, it may most fittingly be quoted in the introduction to that play. 3 days later, January 6th, Ibsen wrote to Scandorff, the Danish novelist. I was quite prepared for the hubbub. If certain of our Scandinavian reviewers have no talent for anything else, they have an unquestionable talent for thoroughly misunderstanding and misinterpreting those authors whose books they undertake to judge. They endeavour to make me responsible for the opinions which certain of the personages of my drama express. And yet there is not in the whole book a single opinion, a single utterance, which can be laid to the account of the author. I took good care to avoid this. The very method, the order of technique which imposes its form upon the play, forbids the author to appear in the speeches of his characters. My object was to make the reader feel that he was going through a piece of real experience, and nothing could more effectually prevent such an impression than the intrusion of the author's private opinions into the dialogue. Do they imagine at home that I am so inexpert
Sample complete. Ready to continue?